went to a family reunion planning committee meeting, which I had never been to. I've always had more than I can do with my time, but my sister invited me and she said, come on, it'll be fun. I thought, yeah, not my kind of fun. But I went determined not to accept an assignment. Well, I didn't. I volunteered for one. My hand went up and I thought, you idiot, get that down. But they saw it and I was in charge of the program. I thought, great, now what do I do? Well, I'm a songwriter. I thought, okay, I'll write a song. I'll write a song about the most famous bit of Romney family lore, which is that whenever a Romney child got married, you know, a descendant of my grandfather, Junius and Gertrude Romney were my grandparents. After about 6 months, the person who married into the family, the in-law, would come to Grandma Gertrude and say, Gertrude, how do we get any say in what happens in our own family? You know, the Romney will is so strong, it just takes over and it's their way or the highway. And so Grandma told them a story about how she just gently suggested to Junius that something might be nice, and he immediately said, no, it can't happen. But then she just let it drop, and about 6 months later, the idea came up again from Junius's mouth. And suddenly it was his idea, and he had figured out a way to make it happen. So she said, if you can make a Romney believe that it's their idea, they'll move heaven and earth to make it happen. So I thought, great, I'll tell that story in song, you know, praising clever grandma and kind of poo-pooing stubborn grandpa. And I got the song almost finished, and every time I picked it up to finish it, I got a sick feeling in my stomach. And I just knew that it was wrong to tell the story in that way. Well, even though I had mowed my grandfather's lawn once a week every summer, from the time I was 12 until I was about 17, I had never sat down with my grandfather because he wasn't a warm, welcoming, come sit on my lap and let me tell you a story kind of grandpa. You know, he was very reserved. And so I never knew the stories of my own grandfather. So now when I suddenly had to tell the stories in a family reunion, I had to research my own grandfather's family, his history. And in so doing, I learned things about him that were just totally different from my initial judgment of my grandfather. I learned that, yes, he had this stern exterior and that he was dictatorial and authoritarian. Yes, that was part of him. But underneath, he had a charitable heart that was just constantly giving away small sums of money to anybody who needed it. When he died, his family finally had access to his checkbook so they could reconcile his financial affairs. And he had never let anybody see his checkbook, not even his wife. And when they did, they found hundreds of checks written to neighbors, associates, friends, many people they didn't even know who they were. And so they contacted some of them, and people were just astounded that they didn't know what was going on. They said, well, didn't you know? If you needed help, all you had to do was ask Junius Romney. And this was the man that I had judged as being only one-sided, you know, the exterior that I had seen, when in reality he was one of the most caring, charitable individuals on earth. So I ripped up the original song and wrote another song that is called The Left and the Right Hands of Love. Because Grandma was the left hand, the turtle dove, and Grandpa was the iron rod, but still, they each showed love in their own way, and together they were a powerful team. After I wrote the song, I found out that my heart had changed completely about my grandfather. You know, where previously I had kind of feared Grandpa because he was so stern. But now I loved my grandfather and wanted to wrap my arms around him and thank him for the legacy that he left. Changed my heart, and I figured I need to tell other people what telling ancestral stories through the arts, because it was the struggle of putting it into artistic form that made me say, okay, that's peripheral. I don't need to include that. That's peripheral. But this is central. This is the theme of Grandpa's life. And it's only in that examination and determination of what's really the story here that you come to know your ancestors well.